can play through him. Obviously, he's very good in pick and roll. He's quick to the rim. He puts pressure on the rim. But
front office priority is certainly establishing a price tag on Claxton, as that Brooklyn could be sitting on a gold mine of cap space in 2025.
The Brooklyn Nets are responsible for the biggest trade of the NBA offseason, and it doesn't appear as if they're going to be finished anytime soon. This team pretty much has its entire roster on the trade block, and if they navigate this situation properly, then they're poised to be one of the most dominant teams in the late 2020s, or even a little sooner. So before we get to the content, we are less than 15,000 subscribers away from getting to 1 million subscribers. So do me a favor and check to see if you're subscribed and have my notifications on so we could get to that mark. And now that we get all that out of the way, cue the intro. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? I'm gonna open up this video with a little bit of a bold take. The Brooklyn Nets are the biggest winners of the 2024 NBA offseason. Now, before you click off and unsubscribe, let me defend myself really quickly. And if you disagree, let me know in the comment section who is your biggest winner of the offseason. Because I know what you might think.
Mike, the Brooklyn Nets are one of the worst teams in the NBA. Their trades only made them worse.
They have virtually no shot of making it to the NBA playoffs. Their head coach is a relatively unknown individual, and their best player at this point is either Nick Claxton, Dorian Finney-Smith, Cam Johnson, or Cam Thomas. Oh, of course, there's that Ben Simmons guy. But if you've been following along with this YouTube channel throughout the entire season, there's been one consistent theme for the Brooklyn Nets, and that's the fact that this team was essentially held hostage by Ben Simmons' contract. You see, whenever you're paying one of the most garbage players in the NBA maximum money, it's impossible to compete. And I'm not even saying that in an insulting way, it's just factually correct. The way you win an NBA championship is by underpaying very good talent, or by surrounding your elite talent with high-end role players. And you're not able to do that whenever you're paying a player that is averaging 6.9 points per game maximum money. So the Brooklyn Nets were stuck. As a result of Ben Simmons being garbage, they just couldn't compete, even though they had a pretty solid assortment of talent. And look, this isn't only exclusive to the Brooklyn Nets. You can make an argument for the Philadelphia 76ers not being able to make it past the second round of the playoffs because they overpaid to Tobias Harris. But in the case of the Brooklyn Nets, Mikal Bridges was a very solid player. Dorian Finney-Smith is a player that many teams would covet. Cam Johnson could provide valuable minutes for a contending team. I mean, these are all coveted players. Cam Johnson has averaged 39% from beyond the arc throughout the entirety of his career. Dorian Finney-Smith averaged similar numbers in Dallas, although recently in Brooklyn, his numbers took a little bit of a dive, presumably because he was dealing with an injury over this past year. The Brooklyn Nets have always had solid pieces, but for some reason, they refused to trade them. The Houston Rockets offered multiple of their own first-round picks back to them in the middle of the trade deadline last year, but the Brooklyn Nets stood pat. I eviscerated them for this, but they rectified this decision in the offseason. You see, in the offseason, the Brooklyn Nets did the unthinkable. I honestly don't know how they pulled this off. They traded Mikal Bridges to the New York Knicks, but honestly, I'm more impressed by their trade with the Houston Rockets than I am by their trade with the New York Knicks, because their trade with the Houston Rockets gave them back their 2025 and 2026 first round pick. And of course, the trade of Mikal Bridges to the New York Knicks is significant because they got an unprecedented 5 first round picks. 4 of them are unprotected, but in the case of re-adding their old picks from the Houston Rockets, the Brooklyn Nets gained something that they didn't have for quite some time, and that's the right to tank. You see, once again, Ben Simmons' garbage contract has made it impossible for this team to contend. And since they didn't have any of their first round picks before, they couldn't tank either for a lottery pick. But now that they were able to get their first round picks back, they could tank and they could potentially add a high value player in the 2025 NBA draft. This in of itself is why I believe the Brooklyn Nets are huge winners, because they went from a team that was an NBA purgatory to a team that has a light at the end of the tunnel, a clear future ahead of them, one where they have a plethora of draft picks and can add many more. more. Ben Simmons is untradeable. No one is gonna want this guy's contract this year. I mean, I don't even think anyone's gonna want Ben Simmons' contract as an expiring contract. And I can't wait to see how this season goes and to make content on Ben Simmons next offseason, because I really wonder what team would want to bring on Ben Simmons following this. But we have our own Ben Simmons content. We've already made our yearly Ben Simmons update. We're not talking too much Ben Simmons here, but obviously he's very significant to the fiber of the Brooklyn Nets. So phase 2 of the Brooklyn Nets' nearly year-and-a-half long plan has officially concluded. Phase 1 was trading Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving and not getting fleeced. Luckily for the Nets, they got one of the most idiotic owners in the entire NBA to overpay for Kevin Durant, and also provided them with another piece to reroute to the New York Knicks. So they ended up getting 9 first-round picks just for trading a 34-year-old Kevin Durant, which is mastery in my opinion. But they're not done yet. This team still has Cam Johnson, Dorian Finney-Smith, Bojan Bogdanovic, and Dennis Schroeder that are available for trade. And there's a number of ways that the Brooklyn Nets can go about this. Cam Johnson has a remarkable contract. He only has 3 years and $69 million left on his deal. Nice. In 5 NBA seasons, this man has averaged 13 points per game off of 45% shooting and 39% from 3. There's multiple ways that the Brooklyn Nets can go about this. One is obviously trading Cam Johnson immediately, and there's a bunch of teams that are interested in Cam Johnson. The Orlando Magic have invested in high-end role players throughout this offseason, paying $66 million to Kentavious Caldwell-Pope over 3 years. They could be interested in bringing in Cam Johnson to build around Paolo Banchero. But if not, obviously the Los Angeles Lakers are always included in each and every single rumor ever, and they never do anything. But probably my favorite team that could trade for Cam Johnson, a team that might be even bigger winners than the Brooklyn Nets if they pull this off, is the Sacramento Kings. So let's run through who the Brooklyn Nets can get for each and every one of these players. If the Los Angeles Lakers were to trade for Cam Johnson, I'm assuming the deal would look something like Cam Johnson and Dennis Schroeder to the Los Angeles Lakers for D'Angelo Russell, Rui Hachimura, and a 2029 first-round pick. That 2029 first from the Los Angeles Lakers is so valuable, especially if it's unprotected, because as a Laker fan, I hate to say it, but we're probably going to be garbage in 2029 because LeBron James is going to be 45 years old at that point, and it's safe to assume that he's not going to be playing for us anymore. But the Cleveland Cavaliers might have the most realistic and most enticing trade for Cam Johnson. The Cleveland Cavaliers could trade Isaac Okoro in a sign-and trade with a 2031 first-round pick, again, assuming that they're going to be garbage in 2031, and in return, the Cavs would receive Cam Johnson, who would slide in perfectly next to Darius Garland and the newly extended Donovan Mitchell, and he'll play for Kenny Atkinson, who historically has been incredible for player development. But there's one thing that's holding back the Brooklyn Nets from doing this, and I'm not here to give you guys another lesson on the apron because I feel like you guys are sick and tired of me explaining the first and second tax apron for the new CBA, but there's a huge problem. You see, it's not only Cam Johnson that's only in rumors for the Cleveland Cavaliers, because the Nets are very interested in Isaac Okoro. But according to Michael Scotto of Hoops Hype, the Nets are among the teams considered a sign-and-trade possibility for Isaac Okoro, though nothing is considered imminent with Brooklyn, sources said. As previously reported by Hoops Hype, Nets forward Dorian Finney-Smith has drawn trade interest from Cleveland and has come up in conversations for Okoro. Cleveland is also intrigued by Cam Johnson, but the problem here has to do with the luxury tax. You see, the Cleveland Cavaliers are trying to stay underneath the luxury tax. They currently sit at $9.7 million beneath the luxury tax with 12 players on the roster. Isaac Okoro signing the qualifying offer of $11.8 million would take them over that, barring other moves. So a huge reason why this sign and trade would go down would be so they could offload other contracts. A trade for Dorian Finney-Smith or Cam Johnson for just Isaac Okoro won't work on its own. Additional players would need to be added, meaning the Cleveland Cavaliers would also need to add in players like Karis LeVert or Georges Niang to help the Cavs avoid the luxury tax this season. Okoro could be the asset used to make a trade like that happen, but as a result of this, Brooklyn may back away from the deal. Needless to say, Brooklyn is in such phenomenal shape. I mean, they have 4 first-round picks in the loaded 2025 draft class. They have 2 first-round picks in 2027, 3 first-round picks in 2028, 2 first-round picks in 2029, and 2 first-round picks in 2031. They also have the rights to swap with Houston in 2027, which means this team is in significant significantly greater position than they were 1 year ago, and definitely than they were during the Kevin Durant, James Harden, Kyrie Irving era. Everything changed for the Brooklyn Nets, and they officially hold the keys to their future. All they have to do is move on from these role players at the perfect time, try to add even more first-round picks to the chest, convince a free agent to sign with them eventually, which they should have no problem doing, because free agents like playing in big markets with teams that have a plethora of assets. But even if they don't decide to do that, they could sit pat and try to tank for Cooper Flag, but if not, then they could take a chance on a player like Dylan Harper or Ace Bailey. Any of these players would be incredible franchise cornerstones to build around, and would give Brooklyn Nets fans a lot of hope for the future. Regardless, the Brooklyn Nets are in great shape, but you know who's not in great shape right now? The NBA has officially backstabbed TNT. It's an insane story. TNT matched their media rights deal, but the NBA said, screw you, I don't care if you matched our media rights deal. We're gonna go with Amazon and NBC, which means Inside the NBA might be done for good. I explained the whole situation in our latest video. I'll leave a link to it on your screen in front of you. And aside from that, I'm your boy Mike. I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.